today we have Joe Tabbanella. Joe is an instructor at Hypnosis Motivation Institute, HMI, for the first nationally accredited college for hypnotherapy, as well as a trainer for neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, mental emotional release as well. Joe graduated with honors and was awarded the HMI Clinical Achievement Award for outstanding accomplishments during his clinical residency. He teaches and mentors students on how to incorporate biofeedback, MER, NLP into hypnosis, highlighting the importance of self-regulation and mental rehearsal in order to build emotional resilience. Joe is also a group facilitator and hypnotherapist at Milestones Ranch, Malibu, and it's an inpatient dual diagnostic treatment center for addiction, as well as group facilitator at the Connect Wellness Mental Health Clinic located in Beverly Hills. Joe offers private sessions at his office in Woodland Hills and travels to teach seminars, workshops, and has been interviewed on podcasts as well as being featured on Bravo, Lifetime. He is also the co-creator of Possible, an app designed to help release negative emotions, reprogram limiting beliefs, and construct a positive future version of oneself. He is also the co-author of several children's books designed to help children access and to get the resources they need to overcome common and developmental challenges. Joe focuses on education and empowering his clients to develop rapport with their subconscious mind, helping them to achieve their goals and live a life they desire. And I'd like to welcome you, Joe. Thank you so much for being on the show today. How you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Great. So
Good.
I was thinking, like at 3 o'clock this morning, some questions that I would be asking you, right? That's what I do when I wake up in the middle of the night. And I remember you talking about the children's books. I'm glad you mentioned it here. Are those ready to be published yet, or have you already published them?
We're in the process of talks right now, so
Okay.
I can't really talk about that,
Okay.
but it's about to, it should be happening within this year.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm looking forward to that. Now let's talk about
Thank
real
you.
quick before we get into some other stuff. This app, Possible, the app. What is this app? What does it do? How do we get it? Do we just download it?
Yeah. We're working on getting it into a easier to download platform, but if it's on my website. But if you go to my website, there's a link to the app. We're in beta testing right now.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
And
okay.
you can download it to the phone and keep it on your phone home screen.
Great.
And use it from there. And right now, the basic pack is on there.
Okay.
I just finished the relationship. It's basically understanding how to align your subconscious mind with your conscious mind's goals, because your subconscious has a whole bunch of different, remember, there's probably 4 or 5 and many more layers that we never even recognize that
Right.
of our being.
Right.
And oftentimes are not congruent and are in conflict with each other, right? We have a primitive brain that's
Right.
just cares about efficiency and pleasure and pain. We have a limbic system, an emotional brain that cares about the conditioning from pleasure and pain, emotions and discomfort, and moving towards pleasure, and also avoiding pain by moving towards pleasure, which is more of an addiction cycle.
Right.
And then we have our higher values, our intentions, our goals, our, let's just say, our authentic self maybe is in there too, and or a purpose. And these patterns are usually out of conflict,
Right.
out of are in conflict with each other, so they're not congruent. So the app is designed to align your conscious mind with your subconscious mind, so you have this kind of unconscious positive feedback loop that builds on itself to move towards a goal. So it seems effortless, even though there's a lot of effort in it.
Right.
It feels effortless.
Right. So let's talk about the NLP. I mean, I look at you, and you're an NLP master. I mean, you use it. If I'm not, just knowing you as I have, almost 4 years, by the way, believe it or not. But it's like in your daily walk of life, how you talk and interact with people. How does that work, or do you only use it when you're like with clients and students?
Well, we got to look at what NLP is first.
Okay.
And there's a lot of misunderstandings about NLP. It's more like hypnosis is my first love, and NLP are let's just say, strategies that work while someone is in hypnosis or when someone is in a dissociated state, and accessing resources, which is a form of hypnosis. So all NLP, I was just teaching it last night, I was summing that up by simply saying, you know, have people stopped smoking? Have there been human beings that stopped smoking without NLP or hypnosis or a therapist? Yes or no?
Yeah, people can stop smoking without it.
Have people gotten over their phobias?
Yes.
Without a therapist or a
Yeah.
hypnotherapist? Or have people decided they've had enough and overcame their fears and moved towards a goal and were successful finally? One day they just committed. Have people left a relationship that wasn't healthy and found a healthy?
Right.
Have people done this? Yes.
Yes.
So all NLP is studying what is the process of when people do that. That are successful at it. It's a study of excellence. It's modeling, right? And so oftentimes when I'll teach NLP, I'll have a student say, yeah, I've done that while I was doing NLP, you know, and I'll say to them, no, NLP is doing you because you came up with a strategy that worked, and NLP just looked at human behavior and what most people do when they overcome a challenge. And when something new shows up, it's like an open language. It's added to NLP, or it expands. But usually the principles are pretty consistent in what works in people's behavior or in understanding a model of behavior. It's a pretty good model of behavior because it's pretty consistent when you measure it against, or you test it against other theories. It seems to either work or supports it. And so, like, understanding motivation, understanding procrastination, understanding what drives our behavior. And once you start noticing this, it's easier to do it in the moment. But the first, or I should say the second step in NLP, the first is identifying your pattern, like looking at it, knowing what it really is, not the surface understanding of your problem, but what's called the internal representation, what you're really internally experiencing when you're having a problem. We think it's the airplane, but maybe it's something else. Maybe it's feeling trapped in a seat. And when we were a child, we couldn't get out of that car seat, so it feels the same. So we have to get the nugget that's connected to that stress response or that emotional state we're in, right? Once you do that, the second step is to dissociate, meaning step out of it and watch yourself objectively. Because that removes not only the emotional charge, right, but it also helps you to see something objectively, and only then can you get insights and new ways of doing things, logical ways of approaching it, things that make more sense, new behaviors that make more sense in moving towards a goal rather than just reacting to it. Well, that dissociation process is what happens in hypnosis. That's why hypnosis was my first love, when I understood how I can dissociate from my existing default network, right, or personality programming, right, and then go into a new pattern, like be enveloped in a new pattern, and do that until there's no more pattern left of the old. The old pattern is gone, right? There's not a drop left. And then suddenly my external world matches this pattern that took sometimes 3 months to create. Right. But by the time it matches it, every single time, I'm not aware that it's matched it because it was so familiar, I wasn't surprised. It was only when something in my environment clicked where I said, well, wait a minute, this is what I used to put in my mind every day 3 months ago. But it wasn't a big deal by the time it showed up because the brain's a pattern recognition device. It's going to find any pattern. There are patterns everywhere, right? We like to make up patterns. So we might as well make up the only real pattern that exists, which is your decision to be habituate to a certain pattern based on choice rather than unconscious defense mechanisms looking for a problem that keeps finding the pattern in it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Well, it does to me because I've taken NLP with you, so I totally get it. But yeah, no, I think that's awesome. I wonder, how closely does NLP relate to law of attraction?
Well, one of the things that was discovered is after studying good therapists and noticing what do they do? What does a good therapist do that gets results, you know, in 3, 4, 6 sessions, as opposed to another therapist that wasn't getting results? Right. They started studying success, people who are successful. So what does a successful person do? When I say successful person, I don't mean wow, they're a CEO of a company necessarily. It just means when we're successful in achieving our goal, anything from learning to walk to learning to talk,
Right.
to overcoming, to achieving a desired outcome.
Could you-
What does everyone have in common?
Right. Would you say success could also be emotional maturity?
Sure, if that's your intention, but
Okay.
success denotes a sense of like, I'm here, I want to get there, I've achieved something,
Okay,
I've gotten
I gotcha.
there.
Okay.
To my mind, I
gotcha.
might be wrong. But yeah, emotional maturity might be a
of it.
success. I want to learn how to communicate better in my relationship. That would be success if you don't,
Right.
blow off the handle or go off, what's the term? Go off the handle?
Blow off the
Blow a lid and, yeah, blow a lid and,
Right.
and
So, yeah. So how do you think it relates? Does NLP relate to law of attraction? If it does, how?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, NLP basically says when you would like something in your life. This is interesting. I want to share this with you. I'm glad you're asking this question because a penny just dropped when I was teaching like neurofeedback and how it relates to hypnosis. So this is interesting now. Okay. First of all, let me talk about answer your question
Sure.
first. In NLP, we say in order to achieve a result, you have to know your outcome. You have to have sensory experience, all 5 senses of your outcome already achieved in your mind.
Okay.
It should be compelling. It should be familiar. You should get a sense of it. You should be you're basically in love with it, right?
Right.
It should be really compelling.
Right.
Then what happens is, because it's so compelling, you step out of the scene and you see yourself in that world, and you notice where you are now, which is not that world. Well, that juxtaposition creates contrast, and the
Right.
greater the contrast, the greater the energy.
Mm-hmm.
And the energy is trying to learn how to overcome challenges to get there,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so if you continue to take action, like in Success is Not an Accident, the
Right.
other app, the great app, the mental bank, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're taking action and you're rewarding yourself for taking action, you're getting always, your focus is on that end result, right?
Right.
You're always moving towards that end result, always moving towards it. And everything is just feedback and flexibility.
Right.
And oftentimes people do that and say, oh, I did that, didn't work. And what usually is happening is, well, if something doesn't work, it just means you gave up or you had a deadline that you didn't meet. There's no such
Okay.
thing as nothing working. It's always in the process of working, unless you
Right.
give up or you had a deadline you're trying to get it done by,
Right.
right? So usually when those two points are not there, when people say it didn't work, it's basically because they didn't really have a compelling idea what they wanted. They had an internal representation and an uncomfortable emotion attached to that of what they don't want. And then they worked hard to hopefully get rid of this thing in their mind.
Right.
But yet this is running the show, this unconscious. That's what I call the law of attraction in reverse, because whatever is repressed and not dealt with becomes fate, as Jung
Right.
said, right? So the brain being a pattern recognition device, it says, yeah, I know you like that thing. I know you want that love in the relationship. That's nice. But what about being abandoned? What about being rejected? Remember, you said you can't accept this. So the whole time I'm expecting the world to change this internal pattern that's pretty much stuck. The best way to
Right.
look at it is in a metaphor, but it's probably some truth to it. It's a pattern of energy that is in the hippocampus in the brain, the part of the brain that has long-term memory. And it probably has a wiring to the amygdala, the emotional center, the
Right.
alarm or novelty center also of
Right.
the brain, right? And so since that's important, even if I do everything I can to get that person into my life, I'm filled with excitement. But that image and that alarm is always waiting for them to pull away. They don't call, they don't text, they seem like they're distant.
Right.
And all of a sudden that alarm goes off, right? And so NLP is to do the law of attraction, right? To engage in law of attraction by keeping the pattern of what you want and taking action, getting closer to it. But then recognizing the internal representation that is unconsciously either stopping you from moving forward or sabotaging. Well, sabotaging and stopping will be the same thing. Or a belief that when you hit that belief, you don't go past it. There it is, and you just stop. And then you give up because the external world has created a self-fulfilling prophecy of that internal experience you already had and you decided was reality, and then you're going to try to work hard to not make it reality.
Right.
Now, here's the interesting thing, because sometimes I've done the law of attraction and I've just been enveloped in the thing I want 24 hours a day. So one can say, well, that's fantasy. Yes, until you become aware that it's not here when you open your eyes and you live in reality. If you live in reality and live in that fantasy at the same time, that's called desire. That's called pattern recognition. That's called scanning the environment to create physically what you want. So if you get out of your way and just stay there, you'll find you're still taking massive action, right? But you're going to be taking action unconsciously to move towards that pattern. And this is where the penny dropped with neurofeedback. So can I back up on neurofeedback?
Yeah, please, yeah.
So neurofeedback, let's say the protocol is I have to increase amplitude, PZ, like the top of my head, the back of my head right here, right? Let's say I want to increase my amplitude of a certain brainwave frequency. So let's say there's a certain frequency, let's say it's 10 hertz, 11 hertz, and I want to increase the brain frequency. So there's an electrode on my head, and I'm looking at a monitor. It could have a game on it, like a video game, a car, or Pac-Man. It could just have waves, frequency waves, with a reward for increasing the brainwave, right? And I want to increase that brainwave only like 4%, 5%. So it's a threshold.
Right.
So that's my chance, like a video game. And I'm trying. And I can't do it. I'm trying to. I have my intent. I already know my intention, right? To increase it.
Right.
So I know if I'm getting closer or further from it all the time. I'm just aware of what I like. But I'm trying, and trying's not working. And all of a sudden, I stop for a second, and through happenstance or just the way the brain works, it happens to increase in amplitude. Maybe I stopped trying so hard, or whatever reason. Maybe I figured out how to intend it and increase for a second. If I register that reward as pleasant, I get over that thing, and I get excited, and I try again, and I stop trying, or try a little bit, and then I try in a different way, and then I get that reward again. My brain starts wanting more through operant conditioning. It starts to create more for me. I just have to know what I like, know that it's happening, and allow whatever's happening to allow. That's called getting out of your way. That's being in the flow. And that's why there's a balance one can get to when they can be completely focused, myopic, right? But usually when people are too myopic and too focused, they're sometimes aggressive, they'll destroy anyone to get what they want, right? And so for kind people or sensitive people or people who maybe more emotionally sensitive, they see those people as too aggressive, so they don't want to do that. So then they just kind of, some people back away and just do the law of attraction. I just visualize all day. And that's more of like kind of a coping mechanism, like a psychosis, where you just imagine you have what you want, but there's no structural tension and no learning to get to where you want. Like you can't just do that and all of a sudden start building a skyscraper. It just doesn't work. You got to get into it.
Right.
So there's a sweet spot where you're completely surrendered and absorbed at the same time in your desire, in love with it, and completely, fully surrendered to the flow of the emotions, processing that contrast.
Good or bad, negative or positive, it doesn't matter.
Because even when it shows up and it's good, it's passing too. So that's what they talk about non-attachment. But the one thing you want to be attached to is your goal inside. Not outside, but inside. Attached to just means you're enveloped in that pattern and making that more compelling, more interesting than anything else. You're not judging any of the other patterns.
Right.
You're just enveloped in this pattern. And then when your body and brain notices that life is not matching it, right?
Right.
There's a flow of energy called adrenaline. Some people call it anxiety because they feel like that's not enough, that they can't just be comfortable with that discomfort and let the discomfort start to move them, right? So they start moving and trying. Now, all of a sudden, they're up against a challenge. In order to get that thing, they're getting close, but now they're going to get rejected or have to do public speaking. And now that internal representation of that fear that was never processed comes to the surface, and suddenly we drop the image of that law of attraction. And then we cope with this pattern of experience. We create defenses and coping mechanisms, and then we stay here. We don't move through this pattern in the world. And this is important because if you look at it through that lens, then you don't have to get all spiritual woo-woo about it. It's very practical. I hold an idea in my awareness.
Right.
It's not here. Everything else becomes black and white, neutral data.
Right.
The image in my mind is permanent. I'll give you a perfect exercise in a minute if you want to know, see what I'm talking about. But the image in my mind is perfect. I love it. And it's just not here. Well, this is always moving anyway, and this is always permanent.
Right.
So my brain and body is going to want to notice the permanent out there, or the pattern out there that is permanent in here, and that's its job. It's going to notice it. If it doesn't notice it, it's going to use creativity to kind of find it. If it can't do that, it'll use creativity to create it. So the only leap you have to make into a spiritual, collective, unconscious, magical way of thinking, which is important to make, because anyone who's really committed to this realized their brain didn't come up with that idea. Someone called it out of nowhere. Like, these weird things happen. And I understand that we can look for patterns to support our belief, and we may go, well, but there are times where when you do this and you get out of the way, ideas come from nowhere. Person calls from nowhere, you bump into someone out of nowhere, and then suddenly it all flows into the physical manifestation of this thing you were loving. But the minute you make that physical manifestation more important than your internal permanent experience manifestation, you've lost it. You lost the process, because the physical is moving anyway. So you're trying to hold on and wish for something that's going to move anyway. Might as well have it here and want it out there while it moves anyway. It's like being in a river, you know, and the nice leaves you like and leaves you don't like. You're neutral to both, but you just start noticing more of the leaves you like, and that goes back to the neurofeedback experience. You just notice it and you like it. If you're doing temperature training, oh, I like that. And then all of a sudden you're out of the hand. You can literally feel your hand getting warmer because you're getting a reward, and it registered. You like that reward. It wants to help you. As long as you get out of the way and say, yeah, I like this. I want more of it. But if I keep trying to raise that brain frequency or drop it, if I keep trying to raise my hand temperature or drop it, it kind of short circuits the experience. Of having a symbiotic flow between the subconscious and conscious and subconscious.
So you said you have a little exercise that you can share with us.
Well, yeah, about pattern recognition.
Okay.
Yeah, I do right now. Yeah.
Share it, and then we'll take a quick break. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're going to take. Well, you know what? Let's do a little light hypnosis. This is light. Don't do this if you're driving, right?
Right. Please. Please don't.
So focus on a spot. Just focus on a spot in your room. Do not do this while you're driving. Focus on a spot somewhere where you're sitting, and just put all your attention on that spot. Don't think about your words in your head. Think about the spot. Focus on the spot, not on words or thoughts. Good. And just notice your breathing, and let the breathing become natural. Let it flow, as if you're breathing right in through your heart. Now allow the exhalation to slow down, become twice as long as the inhalation, as you're still focusing. And after 5 breaths, just allow your eyes to close. Now imagine right in the center of your heart, you're breathing in light right into your heart. It's the most beautiful color you've ever seen. And you're just soaking it in. It's as you're just noticing, tuning into something that's already there. And as you breathe in, you feel this wonderful feeling moving into your heart. You can even give it a word. With each inhalation, you soak it into your heart, right through your body. And with each exhalation, it emanates from your heart and radiates throughout your body and out of your body. Now I want you to think of an orange. An orange, a fruit, an orange. Bright color of it, the rind. And I want you to imagine you're placing that orange right into the center of your heart. Just like the color light, you're putting orange in there too. And you're just soaking with each breath. You give the orange more life, more color, more richness, more dimension, more importance. And you're breathing and you're loving the orange. It's bright. Everything else is becoming unimportant. Now let everything that's not the orange come and go through your mind like data, eternal data. Those conflicting thoughts and images can come and go while the orange is the dominant image and experience. And let any emotion, any emotion come and go through your mind and body while continuing to fall in love or bake, bask, love, receive. It's orange. It's like you're baking it from the invisible world into the physical world through this transduction device called the body, taking internal pattern and bringing it into a physical. And you're the intermediary of the internal pattern into the physical. And this feeling, this image and feeling, is the beginning of transduction from the inner world of energy to an external experience. Now, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to open your eyes. And when you open your eyes, I want you to maintain that feeling in your chest, nice feeling, and the orange, and maintain that as a constant. Just feel that you're projecting the orange as reality and consistent and permanent. And what you see in your environment is just going to be like data. It's unimportant because it doesn't match the orange. It's just black and white moving data, which everything is, right? Time, photons, data, even emotions processing the photons and data around you. So the only thing that you're going to notice is the orange inside you, and you open your eyes, you just notice it's not outside you, but you're still aware of it as a constant real. Good, opening your eyes. And now notice that there's no orange. But notice you're still holding and loving the orange. Do you feel your body wanting to go find an orange, like scanning for an orange?
Yeah.
It doesn't care about anything else right now but the orange. Everything is devalued. It's unimportant. It's just photons. This is data soup. And it's going to pull it. Now, if there was an orange in your room, you'd probably get up right now and walk right to it because you're tuning into that as the most dominant pattern in the world. So it looks for its own pattern in the external world as a pattern recognition device. So if you want to add into collective unconscious synchronicities, that's if you stay there no matter what and you let go of everything no matter what, the body has a tendency to go, where's that darn orange?
Orange, I
and
like
we'll
it.
find a way to create an orange if it has to, if you stay there within that dialectic flow. One thing is permanent, the other thing is in contrast, complete contrast with it. And if you stay with both of them, that's what makes the physical become physical. Makes the invisible become physical as you being a transduction device from the invisible. That's the law of attraction.
That's pretty cool. No, I like it. I like it. And I'll probably have an orange today. Without a doubt. I'll bring that up. Okay, we're going to hold for just a second. We're going to take a couple minutes break, and we're going to do some switching, and then Joe is going to come right back. Okay? All right. And here we are, back with Joe. Back with Most Things Hypnosis. We're talking about NLP, and we're going to, if you have anything to finish up on that, and then we can get into MER.
Okay. So NLP is basically recognizing that anytime you're experiencing I'm experiencing you right now, right?
Right.
The data is hitting my eyes and the ears, and I'm creating a meaning based on my past. So I'm actually deleting stuff, I'm distorting stuff to support either my expectation, my attitude, my decisions I've made, or beliefs I've made, right? So even though I think I'm having an experience, I'm actually creating the experience through filters in the brain. And so sometimes it's positive if you're moving towards a goal and everything is feedback.
Right.
But when you're emotionally charged, when I'm emotionally charged, it's the perfect, and yes, I do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When I'm emotionally charged or triggered by anyone or anything, I see it as my teacher because I recognize that I'm seeing something in my head and feeling something in my body that's really doesn't have to be felt or seen right now. Someone's doing something. The external situation could be a problem, but what's happening in here is my creation. And I'm not creating it right now. It got stuck years ago through a process of either resisting the emotion, suppressing the emotion, or making a decision based on the experience.
You know, it's funny. Funny you say that, but I can interrupt for just a second. I just said I'm divorced now, so I'm using my maiden name, and I just inadvertently just used my married name. It was like that's just that pattern that has been stuck in my head for all these years.
Yeah.
Is that kind of like
Yeah,
similar?
because we're automation devices, and this is why I found the law of attraction and NLP comes together, and hypnosis too. I mean, hypnosis is a delivery system to make that really powerful, right?
Right.
So all we really have to do is learn a simple thing called be in charge of what we're focusing on. I don't even want to say focus because that's a little bit, you don't really focus. You put your awareness on something that's important, and your brain does the focusing. So all we have to do is practice using our focusing ability to focus on what we choose, but that includes states of being. It's not just focusing on your goal and where you're headed with all 5 senses. It's understanding that you can be focused on a feeling of either positive expectancy or confidence or just gratitude for knowing every moment's getting you closer. If we don't practice that, we are not taking control. Remember this. This is the coolest way that I look at it. The coolest way for me to look at it is for me to go, wow, we really need to use it. Other than the great apes, we have 35% of our brain frontal lobes. Even the smartest animals have like 7%. Right? A dog, a smart dog, has 7%. We have the ability, right, to experience this programmed being through classical conditioning program, operant conditioning, modeling, right, personality predispositions, right, that causes a personality to form and behaviors to form by the time we're about 9, 10, 11, 12, right? We have this thing that's actually able to step out of the program and change it. We're not responsible for the programming. We're open, hypnotic subjects from 0 to 9. But we have this ability to look at a program, step out of it, move it around, change it, bring different feelings, look at it from a different point of view, move forward into the world. Imagine what that would be like. Overcome challenges in advance, see it through a different reframe so we don't have the same response and same results. And we're not using it. It took me to 38 to realize we weren't using it. And that's when I said, I'm going to stop talking about this nonsense, and I'm going to start doing it. And I realized in doing it, the last thing I did was want to talk about manifesting. I was just too busy enjoying the fact that I can experience what I want to experience for at least 20 minutes a day, 3 times a day. It's not fantasy. In a sense, it was fantasy, but I was taking fantasy into the body rather than escaping the body to live in fantasy so I don't have to feel the body. See the difference? Yeah. So that's creative visualization that starts to create an experience. But that takes work because the subconscious is going to say, no, hello, I'm the master. You pay attention to this memory, this emotion, that possibility, this expectation. You don't put your awareness on some experience we've never had before. What are you talking about? We're animals. We're not creative beings.
Right.
And that's when you disengage, you say, thank you for sharing. I'm just going to notice this for a minute. It's in the field. It's like the orange. People applauding me, let's say, and loving me, saying, oh, you're wonderful. It's in the field. I'm not going to create it. I'm just going to enjoy it. Can I freaking enjoy it for 10 minutes? Right. Well, it's not going to happen. That's okay. And then you start changing the nervous system because then you fool the brain into the experience. Once the brain gets fooled into the experience, it's hypnosis, right? It's fooled into having a real experience because it doesn't know the difference.
Right.
Because it left you alone because you said, I'm just going to fantasize. And you start enjoying it. And when the other emotions and thoughts come up and you welcome their right to come and go through that experience, that's when you start to reprogram the pattern, just saying, I'm devaluing this, but I'm falling in love with this. Awesome. And that becomes the new orange, so to speak, the pattern recognition. It starts to go, it stops paying attention to the rejection or the people complain. It doesn't care about it. It's too busy trying to find that pattern in the world to get stuck in why that person said that to me or why that person did that. You just keep learning from it and moving on. You don't really pay much attention to it.
So what about how does MER come into play here? Mental emotional release.
Well, out of NLP, again, it's an open language, so you're releasing belief systems and you're releasing old emotional baggage, and out of that came timeline therapy from Tad James, right? Okay. And forgive
MER.
What's his name? Woodford Small. My goodness, please forgive me, Woodford. I forgot the other writer of timeline therapy. I hope you're editing this. Oh, there it is. Oh, wood small. Why wood small? I knew it was small in wood. Why wood small? Sorry, wood small. So they wrote timeline therapy, and then out of that evolved MER, which is very similar in principle. And then as I work with it, it evolves even more. I start finding new ways of doing the same thing or getting deeper when you get into a problem, and that's how it evolves. Strategies always are evolving to be more efficient, and that's where that came out of it. It was a more efficient way to release negative emotions and limiting beliefs.
So that's what MER basically does.
Yeah.
When I was taking your class and we were doing MER, you used me as a demonstration. I had a problem. Do you remember with that?
No. Which one? Oh, yeah.
That. Well, it started. Being dismissed. Yet being dismissed, but it started because you triggered it, and it wasn't your fault. You had no idea, but a few months prior, we were at a workshop that you were conducting, and I wanted to show you something I'd learned in Law of Attraction. And 3 times I went over to you, but every 3 times the technician they were recording the workshop. They needed to mic you. They needed your attention. I got 3 times. You were just like, just a minute. You were sincere. You weren't rebuffing me, but that's how I took it because of an experience that I had in a relationship or whatever where it was just many years of this. So when we discussed it sometime later, you're like, and I'm explaining it to you, I had tears in my eyes, and you're like, you're not over that. So you took me through this little timeline moment. It was like, 15 minutes or whatever. It was recorded. It was kind of cool. And then a couple hours later, during the day of class, you brought me back up to test it. And you went like this. And I'm like, don't disrespect me. It was so immediate. And you said something that really changed me at that moment. You said, you are setting up boundaries now. And it had never occurred to me until then that I hadn't really realized that boundaries were a thing. So no, it just it's almost like it snowballs into this wonderful effect. One thing happens and something else happens. And it was a domino. I didn't know I didn't have boundaries. I was just working on, when someone does this to me, I don't care anymore.
Right. Well, that's why we get stuck in an emotion. Emotion is just asking one of 2 things. Is this something we need to accept and then get comfortable around? Or is this something we need to change, right? Like, don't do that, and accept, right? If we don't do either of the 2, it's still trying to warn us.
Yeah.
It's still, the emotions are still, what do we do with this? They're doing it again. What do we do? I yelled at them. It didn't work. I'm mad. I complained about them to everyone. I split. I talked about them behind their back. It didn't work.
Trying so hard.
Because the emotions are asking a very simple question, and we don't sometimes want to do one or the other, so we get stuck. And then we find people to enable those emotions by complaining about something with us. The emotions you're just asking, is this something that you need to be okay with in life? Not like it, be okay with. Like, people dismiss you and then you just walk away from them or say no, and is this something you need to do here, which is to learn to say, please don't do that. Or is there a reason you're doing that? Or am I missing something? It creates more curiosity rather than assumptions when you release an emotion. But when you have an emotion, you're actually projecting the transference that you already had from mom or dad. And I almost can guarantee it wasn't from the relationship. The relationship was what you attracted because you didn't process it before.
And that's very true. Something else that you and I talked about not too long ago, I was commenting to you about complaining people who complain about a situation. And I don't want to get into too many details, but the overall sense of what you were saying, it's kind of a split personality of people. It's saying one thing and not doing another, or doing one thing and saying another, that incongruency that we were talking about. I'm like, can you tap into that a little bit, how that...
Yeah. Yes, oftentimes it's kind of the point I was making. When someone's uncomfortable and they have a belief that it can't be fixed, or to fix it they have to do something they don't feel like doing, or they don't feel like accepting the experience and moving on, defenses can be built, that make you feel at least that you're right, and you get to complain, so you can split. You can split people. You can say, you're on my side. You see what they're doing. And so it feels there's a sense of safety, because by taking full responsibility for your problem, for the problem, you may have to fix it. And fixing it may mean you have to take more responsibility than you want to, maybe you're ready to. Everyone does this. I did it for years, and then I realized I was not accepting something or seeing it through a different lens, and then I stopped it. So when complaining becomes the same thing, it's you either do something or you accept it, but if you don't, you can start complaining, we can start complaining, and then as we complain, it becomes a kind of a way to feel good about ourselves, because it becomes a defense, especially if it feels good and we have someone else taking our side. Yeah, it becomes someone taking our side because we're complaining with them, and then we feel safe, like we belong. But that, these are all defenses to unprocessed emotions. It's just
process the emotions, get rid of those defenses, create new boundaries.
Right.
And
and know your outcome. I'm sorry.
And then know your outcome. Something you also taught me I thought was really cool, and I use it, and I always give you credit. And I don't know where you got it from, but I love it. I call it reverse engineering your evidence. So you had said take where you're at to where you want to be, your goal. This is today or whatever, and it's like on a timeline. So here's your goal. So what is that goal? So it's XYZ. Well, what was the one step you did to get to XYZ? And that's all you focus on. What was that one step to get there? Now, okay, and you write it down. Now, what was that step that you took to get there? And you kind of reverse it. When I do this, the mental bank thing, I have everyone do this on one goal, do it for every single goal, be specific, and it really sets them up to understand what value events are when they do the mental bank. Oh, and you do it for all your goals. Now you have a set of evidence. Now you have values. You get to the starting point because you've done it backwards. Now you don't have to make a list going forward because it hasn't happened yet. I don't know if I've explained it right. But you
beautifully said.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If you want to go here and you don't have the steps needed to go there, it creates too much of a chasm.
Yeah.
Right? So the brain is like, look at any animal trying to achieve a goal. They're good if what they're trying to achieve is like biofeedback. It's right there in reach. It's a threshold. It's right there that I can figure out how to change it. But if I'm here and I'm in the Midwest and I work in an office, I want to be a rock star in Hollywood. There's no kind of movement. There's too much of a chasm, right? So it can create stress. Now, I can jump to my first, what we say, do something about it goal, right? Do something about it here. And it could be very believable. Just get really good at singing, or get a band together. That's your first step, right? That's a lot of work. That's a lot of glucose being burned by the brain and body with no real reward. Right. It's doable. It's achievable, and I can do it. But there's no good reason to it. When I just think about this, too much of a chasm. I get overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. But if I go here and experience not just what I did, but what happened to me. That's very important to
Yes.
What happened to you here? What must have happened? Because it helps the brain to remember that you're not fully responsible for only the action. Things happen. Something goes viral sometimes. You have an idea that comes from nowhere. You have a dream. You read a book. You get a certification, and it clicks. You meet somebody in Starbucks, someone you haven't spoken to in years. So it's all these steps. Now, once you have trained the brain, and this is where the difference between NLP and the law of attraction comes from. Because this is also NLP techniques. One of the reasons why I became a trainer, because I did this on my own. And then I saw, to get the last step and go backwards. Okay, so they knew that strategy that I used and many use, apparently, right? Which is what scientists use when they get an alien ship. They're reverse engineering it. They're getting the end, and they're breaking it down. How do you know how a house is built? You start with the roof, and you take it apart, and you go, oh, okay, now I know where to start to build up. Right. So you go to the end backwards. So as you go backwards through these incremental, successive, chainable events, the brain really feels like it already happened. It's no different than a child seeing a whale breaching the ocean, right? Breaching the waves, and is in love with the waves. And the parents say, you see that? You can do that. What do you mean? You can live your life with those wells. How? Protecting them and swimming with them. How? Well, you're going to be in high school next year, 4 years, and then you're going to get a bachelor's in biology, and then you're going to get a master's in biology, a PhD in a certain type of marine biology that focuses on whale. That brain already saw the end result. Going to school is no big deal. But where every moment is just getting closer and excited to get there, right? And that creates excitement. But if you don't know those steps, and you're doing something that's not an academic road to it, that you know ABC and you're going to get some reward. This is where a lot of creative people suffer. Okay. Because they don't know how to go to the end backwards. They just want to do what they want to do here and feel good, and hopefully they can make a living doing it rather than coming
where they want to be.
Coming here and then seeing the possibilities. So the brain feels it's possible to get there. And it starts linking the two. So now the first achievable goal feels exciting because I know I could reach there. If I know I can reach there, I know I'm getting there.
Right.
So the difference between that and law of attraction is like the difference between what we just said and artificial intelligence.
Okay.
A program has to be programmed, A to B, B to C, and then 7 o'clock comes, it turns on the email, then sends out spam, right? Mm-hmm. It knows, it goes A, B, C, D, E. And so now you just gave the brain a very happy program. So it's very happy because it knows what it's doing and it's already experienced the program. Artificial intelligence is like the law of attraction, which is you just put in the end result, you give it 2 parameters, and it's finding it's open to a million zillion different ways of doing it. So you have to have more confidence and faith to stay there and just be present to that juxtaposition with that contrast, right? Awesome. You just got to be present all the time to that orange and never leave it, no matter what emotions come up. That's a little more difficult. So I split the difference. I go to the end, go backwards, and then I go to the end again, and I say, now think about all the things you didn't even think you could possibly happen, right. Things you didn't know, the things that happen out of nowhere. So it blends the two. It opens up to a bigger field, and yet it makes the brain happy because it has some kind of successive steps.
Awesome. Joe, we're running out of time. I know, it went by so fast. I'd love to have you come back and do some more of this.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thank you so very much for being here today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
It's just been amazing. And I mean, I took notes. I always take notes when you speak. You know, you need to listen, people.